everyone. I have to say the average height in this room is much higher than that of San Francisco and Shanghai, where I just was. So hi, I'm Alice. I'm an illustrator from San Francisco. And today I want to talk about these three guys. I'm a really big fan of these three artists. Who are they? This is Bjork. This is Kanye.
Excuse me, is you saying something? You can't tell me nothing.
And this is Miss Britney Spears. So aside from being three really talented musicians, what do these guys have in common? Well, I think for us, as people who work in creative fields, we can look to them as three great examples of how to blend personal artistry with their brand voice as commercial artists. So what do I mean by that? Well, just a quick story. Like I mentioned, today I'm an illustrator, but 4 years ago, I was not an illustrator. I did not even know how to draw. I was an early product designer, fresh out of business school, working at Dropbox. And one day at work, I walked past one of these things. This is a Wacom Cintiq. It's basically like a monitor that you can draw directly on. Artists use it to paint and draw digitally. And I was just so curious, and I was instantly hooked. Lucky for me at the time, Dropbox was still pretty small, so if I needed illustrations for my projects, which I did, I had to become the illustrator. So that's how I became an illustrator. Over the course of working at Dropbox as an illustrator, I also was forced to learn how to draw at the same time, which at times was a very challenging and difficult process. But over time, I started to learn how to become more comfortable with both the Dropbox voice and also learning how to draw. I started to learn things like composition, conceptual thinking, without the constraint of having to think about style or technique. At the end of it, I felt pretty comfortable as a product illustrator at Dropbox and also an artist in general. And then something really interesting happened where I started to develop my own personal voice. I can't really explain it, but I just felt this urge to draw these like weird animals and creatures and all this like colorful stuff that if you think about it, it's pretty different from the corporate voice that I was drawing in. But I just felt like it was coming from somewhere inside of me, and it was like a thread that I wanted to pull. And I didn't know where exactly it would go, but I felt like it would be something interesting. So this was a present that I made for one of the sushi chefs at Dropbox. And so I realized that I was facing sort of this choice that I had to make, that anyone who regards their work as being remotely creative or artistic has to decide at some point in their career. Because our time and energy are finite resources, we have to decide where on the spectrum that we want to fall. On one end, we can decide to spend most of our time and most of our output producing work in the voice of the companies that we work at. And on the other end of the spectrum, we could choose to spend most of our time and output developing our own personal voice. And then somewhere in between, which is where I was, we can try to balance the two. For instance, I was working at a day job and also doing stuff on the side. And I think that we can look at these artists as great examples of the ends of the spectrum. So for instance, Britney Spears is this like amazing pop package, but we don't really know like what her personal voice is. Like we don't know what Britney the person sounds like. We just know Britney the brand. And then you have someone like Bjork, who's really known for her unique sound. She's really like pushed the industry. And on the other hand, she might not have as much as Britney, for instance, in the realm of recognition or fame. And then somewhere in the middle, we have someone like Kanye West, who undoubtedly has really helped to shape the genres of R&B and rap as both a rapper and producer, but also tends to align himself with large corporate brands. Something that he often tweets about in frustration. So it's not that one position on the spectrum is better or worse. All these three musicians are great. It's just that it's important to understand this decision and consciously make and own it. And as for me, I think it's pretty obvious where this talk is going, but I chose to pull the thread of personal artistry and pursue my voice as an independent artist. And so with a little bit of Mr. West's advice here, I quit my job and am now really happily working as an independent artist, chasing the thread of drawing quirky animals, fun, fantastical colors in my work, and just stuff that feels like me and makes me really happy as an artist. And I would say that it's probably one of the most artistically rewarding and empowering decisions I've ever made, second only to learning how to draw in the first place. Thanks.